The gunshot tore through the silence of Sweetwater Creek like lightning cracking across the Colorado sky. Olivia Fletcher dropped behind an overturned wagon, her breath coming in short, terrified gasps. Smoke drifted through the air, stinging her eyes as her trembling fingers clutched the small derringer her father had insisted she carry. Around her, the world had turned to chaos. Horses screamed, men shouted, and the smell of gunpowder hung thick as death. The ambush had come without warning. One moment, her wagon train had been rolling west toward their new life. The next, bandits had descended from the ridge, firing wildly. Now the wagons were burning, the supplies scattered, and the few who hadn't fled lay still in the dust. Somewhere among them was her brother James. Olivia tried to move, but the weight of fear pinned her in place. Blood trickled down her temple where a bullet had grazed her, and her heart pounded so loud she thought it might give her away. "Come out, sweetheart," a rough voice called from somewhere beyond the wreckage. "Ain't no use hiding. We'll find you." Quote. Her breath caught. She pressed a hand over her mouth, the world spinning. She'd never felt so small or so utterly alone. Her parents were still back east, waiting for word that she and James had reached their claim. She'd promised to send a letter once they were settled, but there would be no letter now. James was gone. Everything was gone. Then, from the opposite direction of the bandits, shouts, came the thunder of hooves. Fast, hard, steady. Olivia froze, her wide eyes darting to the trail. Lone Rider burst from the shadows, his coat snapping in the wind, a glint of sunlight flashing off the badge pinned to his chest. The bandits turned their guns toward him, but the stranger was quicker. His revolver barked 4 sharp shots in rapid fire. 2 men dropped instantly, another spun and fell. The last tried to run, but the rider's aim was true. When silence returned, it was broken only by the rustle of wind through the sagebrush. Olivia stayed, crouched behind the wagon, her chest heaving. She didn't know if this man was savior or another threat. Then came his voice, steady, calm, nothing like the bandits. "Anyone alive out here?" She hesitated, then whispered hoarsely, "Here." The sound of boots on gravel came closer. A tall man appeared beside the wagon, eyes as blue as the western sky beneath the brim of his hat. His shirt was dusty, his vest worn, but his movements were careful, deliberate. A silver star gleamed on his chest. "Name Zachary Aldridge," he said quietly. "Deputy out of Silver Creek. You hurt?" Olivia's lips trembled as she looked up at him. "Just a scratch." "But my brother." Her voice broke, the rest swallowed by a sob. Zachary crouched beside her, his tone gentle. "I'm sorry, miss, but we need to move. It's not safe here." He offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was strong and steady, the first solid thing in a world that had fallen apart. As he helped her stand, the sight of the devastation hit her all over again. Her brother's body lay still among the sagebrush. "I can't leave him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Zachary nodded. "We'll bury him proper." Quote. He found a shovel among the wreckage and began to dig while Olivia gathered what few things remained: a family locket, James's pocket watch, the letter of introduction to the Denver land office. Together they laid her brother to rest beneath the open sky. Olivia said a few broken words from the Lord's Prayer, her tears falling onto the dry earth. When it was done, she stood beside the fresh mound, her body shaking. "He was all I had out here," she said. "You still have your life," Zachary replied softly. "And that's a start." He offered her his canteen, and she drank, the water cooling her throat like mercy itself. "Where will we go?" she asked. "Silver Creek," he said. "Closest town. There's a doctor there who can look at that wound, and a safe bed to rest in." He helped her mount his horse, then swung up behind her, one arm steady around her waist as they rode away from the wreckage. The warmth of him, the quiet confidence in his posture, gave her a fragile sense of safety. They made camp by nightfall, a small fire flickering in the hollow of the hills. Zachary handed her some dried meat and coffee, his movements unhurried, practiced. Olivia ate in silence, the food tasteless against the ache in her chest. "How long have you been a deputy?" she asked, more to distract herself than out of curiosity. 3 years. he said. "Before that, I was just another cowboy drifting from one ranch to the next." "And you stopped drifting?" He gave a small smile. "Eventually, a man gets tired of running from his ghosts." Olivia stared into the fire. "I thought coming west would fix everything, start fresh. But now," she swallowed hard, "now there's nothing left." Quote, "There's always something left," he said quietly. "Sometimes you just can't see it yet." The words settled deep in her chest. She studied his face in the firelight, the faint scar near his eye, the shadow of stubble on his jaw, the calm strength in his gaze. For the first time since the ambush, her heart slowed its wild beating. "You should rest," he said softly. "I'll keep watch." "I don't think I can sleep." "Try," he replied. "Morning'll come faster that way." Quote, he spread his bedroll for her, and though she wanted to refuse, exhaustion finally dragged her down. As she drifted towards sleep, she heard him humming quietly, a tune both sad and comforting. Just before she slipped under, she whispered, "Thank you." His voice came back, steady and low. "Sometimes, Miss Fletcher, the best things in life are found when we're not looking for them." The last thing she felt before sleep claimed her was the steady warmth of the fire, and the strange, unfamiliar sense that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. Morning light filtered through the cottonwoods, soft and gold against the ashes of the dying fire. Olivia woke to the sound of birds and the distant rush of the creek. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then the memory hit. The ambush, James's grave, and the quiet cowboy who'd watched over her through the night. Zachary was already up, crouched by the stream filling their canteens. He looked back when he heard her stir. "Morning," he called. "Coffee's ready." Olivia sat up, brushing the sleep from her eyes. Her muscles ached, her head throbbed faintly, but she was alive. That alone felt like a miracle. "I didn't mean to sleep so long," she said, as he handed her a steaming tin cup. "You needed it," he replied. "You've been through hell." They broke camp quickly and set out toward Silver Creek. The trail wound through rolling hills and narrow passes, the air crisp with pine and dust. Olivia rode beside him now, perched on a borrowed mare named Daisy. She wasn't much of a rider, but Zachary kept a steady pace, matching her comfort. He pointed out landmarks as they went, a hawk circling high, a deer trail cutting through the brush, the faint shimmer of snow on distant peaks. "This land's rough," he said, "but it's honest. It gives back what you put into it." "It's beautiful," Olivia murmured, her voice soft with awe. "I never knew the world could look so big." "Most folks don't," he said, glancing her way, "not until they lose something that made their old world small." The words lingered between them. Olivia didn't reply, but she understood. Grief had torn her old life apart, leaving only open space where comfort used to be. By midday, they reached the first signs of Silver Creek, a scattering of cabins and a faint plume of chimney smoke rising against the blue. The sight made something inside Olivia loosen, though part of her feared what came next. The town was small but bustling, built from rough timber and hope. A blacksmith's hammer rang from one end of the street. Children chased each other past the general store, and wagons rolled slowly through the dust. For the first time since the attack, Olivia felt the presence of civilization. Zachary led her straight to a whitewashed building with a faded sign. Dr. Henry Wilson, physician and surgeon. The doctor, a tall man with a gray beard and steady hands, ushered her in without question. "She took a graze to the temple," Zachary explained, "and some shock." Dr. Wilson examined the wound with practiced care. "You're lucky," he said. "Another inch and that bullet would have done worse than graze." He cleaned the cut, applied a fresh bandage, and offered a small, reassuring smile. "You'll be fine, Miss Fletcher. Just rest." "Thank you," she said softly. "She'll need a place to stay," Zachary added. "Mrs. Holbrook runs the boarding house up the street," the doctor said. "Tell her I sent you. She'll look after you." When they stepped back into the sunlight, Olivia turned to him. "You've done more than I can ever repay." Zachary tipped his hat slightly. "Just doing my duty." But Olivia could see something in his eyes, a gentleness that had nothing to do with duty. It unsettled her, but not in a bad way. Mrs. Holbrook, a kind widow with a sharp tongue, gave Olivia a small room at the top of the stairs and a warm meal that nearly brought tears to her eyes. "You rest, dear," she said. "The world can wait till tomorrow." And Olivia did rest. For the first time since the ambush, she slept in a real bed, her dreams haunted but no longer suffocating. The next morning she found Zachary waiting for her in the dining room, freshly shaven and looking less like the grim deputy who'd pulled her from the ashes. He rose as she entered. "Morning, Miss Fletcher," he said, pulling out a chair. "Hope you're hungry." "I am," she admitted, realizing it was true. Over coffee and biscuits, Zachary told her what he'd learned. Sheriff Tanner sent a posse to the wagon trail, buried the dead, but the bandits got away. From what they found, it looks like the Carson gang. "The same Carson who owns half the territory?" she asked, shocked. "The same," he confirmed. "His brother-in-law runs Morrison land and cattle, name you'll want to remember." As if the thought summoned it, a rider appeared outside the window, stopping at the boarding house porch. Mrs. Holbrook entered moments later, handing Olivia a folded letter. "This came for you," she said, "brought up from Fort Collins." Olivia frowned. "For me?" She tore the seal and read aloud. "Miss Fletcher, I represent parties interested in purchasing your land claim. We can offer $500 cash upon agreement. We'll arrive in Silver Creek within the week to discuss terms. Respectfully, J. Morrison, Morrison Land, and Cattle Co." Zachary's jaw tightened. That didn't take long. "You think it's connected?" she asked, dread rising. "I'd bet my badge on it. Carson's men kill settlers for their land, then Morrison swoops in and buys it cheap. It's their pattern." Olivia's stomach turned. "Then my brother died for dirt." Zachary shook his head. "No, he died for a dream. And you're still here to protect it." He leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "Don't sell, no matter what they offer. We'll get proof of what they're doing. But first we have to make your claim official. If you're living on that land, the law's on your side." "You mean go out there?" she asked. "Yes. It's dangerous, but we'll take men I trust. The sooner you stand on that land, the harder it'll be for them to take it from you." Olivia looked down at the letter in her hands. The ink blurred as her eyes filled with tears, not of weakness but of anger. She folded the paper carefully. "Then I'm going," she said. "I won't let my brother's dream die in a courtroom." Zachary smiled faintly, pride flickering behind his eyes. "You've got more grit than half the men I know, Miss Fletcher." The next morning dawned cold and pale, Olivia dressed in a plain skirt, boots, and a borrowed coat. When she stepped outside, Zachary was waiting with 3 horses and another rider, a wiry young man with a quick smile. "Miss Fletcher, this is Charlie Redmond," Zachary said. "Best tracker in the county." "Ma'am," Charlie said, tipping his hat. "Sorry for your loss, but we'll see you safe." Olivia mounted the gentle mare Zachary offered, her heart thudding as she looked west. "How far?" "Half a day's ride," Zachary said. "We'll reach your land by noon." They rode out together, 3 small figures cutting across the endless wild. The air smelled of pine and sun-warmed grass, and as the miles passed, Olivia felt something stirring inside her, a quiet strength she thought she'd lost. By the time the sun climbed high, they reached a rise overlooking a wide valley where a silver creek wound through fields of wildflowers. Beyond it, the mountains stood tall and blue against the sky. Olivia drew a slow breath, eyes filling. "James picked this land," she whispered. He said it was the kind of place where dreams could take root. Zachary reined in beside her, his voice soft. "Then let's make sure no one steals it from you." She turned toward him, the wind lifting her hair, and for the first time since her world had burned, she felt a flicker of something new, hope. The valley spread wide beneath them, a stretch of untouched beauty framed by distant mountains. Olivia sat on her horse in silence, her eyes sweeping over the land that was meant to be her new beginning. A ribbon of silver water ran through the meadow, cottonwoods rustled in the soft wind, and sunlight touched the grass in golden waves. It was perfect and dangerous. Zachary and Charlie rode ahead, scanning the area. When they dismounted near the creek, Charlie crouched to study the ground. "Someone's been here," he said quietly. 4 men, maybe 5, a few days old. They circled this place like they were marking it. Zachary's jaw tightened. Carson's men. Olivia's hand went to her chest. You mean they've already been on my land? Looks that way, Zachary said. They were checking boundaries, same as we are now, but we'll make sure they know it's yours. He showed her how to drive a wooden marker into the soil. This is proof of occupancy, he explained. If anyone challenges your claim, the law will back you up. You belong to this land now, Olivia. She looked at him, the way his steady hands guided hers on the hammer, the way his voice softened when he said her name. I never thought I'd hear someone say that again, that I belong somewhere. He met her eyes. Then it's about time you did. They set up camp near the creek as the sun began to sink. Charlie cleaned his rifle while Zachary built a small fire. Olivia gathered wildflowers and placed them near a rock where she planned to build her cabin one day. For the first time, she could picture it. A home, a life, something beyond grief. As night fell, the three of them sat around the fire eating rabbit and hard bread. Charlie told stories about his tracking days, and Zachary laughed, though Olivia noticed he never took his eyes off the dark edges of the valley. The quiet between them wasn't empty. It was peaceful, full of things that didn't need to be said aloud. Later, when Charlie went to make a last check of the perimeter, Zachary turned to her. You did good today, he said. Olivia smiled faintly. I didn't do much. You stood your ground. You claimed what's yours. That's more than most would have done. He hesitated, his gaze steady. You're stronger than you think, Olivia. The way he said her name made her chest ache. I don't feel strong, she whispered. I feel hollow, like the world took everything out of me and left nothing behind. Zachary reached across the small fire and took her hand gently. That hollow feeling, it doesn't last forever. I know because I've lived with it too. She looked up, surprised. You? Quote. He nodded, eyes reflecting the flames. Lost my whole family to cholera when I was 20. Thought I'd never feel anything again. Then one day I realized the emptiness wasn't punishment. It was space. Space waiting to be filled with new life, new meaning. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. And what filled yours? He gave her a small, sad smile. Maybe I'm still figuring that out, but I think it might start with you. The words caught her breath. She couldn't look away from him, from the rough kindness in his eyes, the sincerity in his voice. He didn't move closer, didn't demand anything. He just held her hand, as if grounding her to the world again. Before she could reply, Charlie returned. Riders, he said sharply. 6 of them, headed this way. Zachary rose instantly. Morrison. They doused the fire, taking cover behind a line of cottonwoods. When the riders came into view, Olivia's heart pounded so loud she thought they'd hear it. Morrison rode in front, his black coat snapping in the wind, a thin smile twisting his face. Deputy Aldridge, he called. Didn't expect to find you babysitting out here. Zachary stepped into view, his revolver low at his side. This land belongs to Miss Fletcher. You're trespassing. Morrison's eyes gleamed. We're just making a friendly visit. Seems a shame for a woman alone to try and hold this claim. I've got an offer that might change her mind. She's not interested, Zachary said. Morrison's smile faded. You sure about that, Deputy? The West can be a cruel place for folks who don't know when to let go. Olivia felt fear crawl up her spine, but she forced her voice steady. I'm not selling. Not now. Not ever. The man's gaze turned cold. Then you'll regret it. He signaled his men, but before anyone could move, Charlie fired a warning shot that whistled past Morrison's hat. The horses spooked, rearing. Zachary's pistol was drawn in a flash, aimed square at Morrison's chest. Next one won't miss, Zachary said. His voice was calm, deadly. The standoff lasted only seconds, but it felt endless. Finally, Morrison raised his hand. You'll regret this, Aldridge, he spat. Then he wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following close behind. When the dust settled, Olivia's legs gave out, and she sank to the ground. Zachary was at her side instantly. You all right? She nodded shakily. They'll come back. I know, he said. That's why we're going back to Silver Creek. The sheriff needs to hear about this. They packed quickly, and rode hard through the night, arriving in town at dawn. Sheriff Tanner was waiting at the livery stable, his face grim. "Marshal wired from Denver," he said. "Carson's gang's behind half a dozen killings and land grabs. We've got proof now." Zachary's eyes hardened. "Then let's finish this." The posse rode out at first light. Olivia stood on the porch, watching him mount up. "Be careful," she said, her voice trembling. He looked down at her, blue eyes soft. "I'll come back." "I promise." 3 days later, they did return, but battered, dust-covered, and carrying their wounded. Zachary was among them, pale but alive, his arm bandaged, and his shirt stained with blood. "He took a bullet meant for me," Charlie told her, "but Carson's dead. It's over." Olivia barely heard the rest. She followed as they carried Zachary to the doctor's office, refusing to leave his side. Through the long night, she bathed his forehead, whispered prayers, and watched for every flicker of his breath. When dawn came, Zachary opened his eyes. "You're still here," he murmured. "Where else would I be?" She whispered, tears blurring her vision. He smiled faintly. "Did we get them?" Quote, "All of them," she said softly. "It's over. My land, our land, is safe." His eyes flickered with surprise. "Our land?" She nodded, her voice trembling but sure. "If you still want to court me, if that promise still stands." Zachary reached for her hand, his grip weak but warm. "It stands. Always." She bent closer, tears falling onto his fingers. "I told you I was empty," she whispered. "But you filled me, with hope, with courage, with something I thought I'd never feel again." He smiled, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Then let me fill you with forever." Quote, 6 months later, the valley bloomed again. The cabin was built, the barn nearly done, and a small schoolhouse stood near the creek, where Olivia taught children from nearby homesteads. On the porch, she stood beside Zachary, now healed, now her husband, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. "Happy, Mrs. Aldridge?" he asked, his arm around her waist. She smiled up at him, completely. The wind carried the scent of pine and new grass across the valley, where the river gleamed like liquid silver. She rested her head against his shoulder and whispered, "You filled me with forever, Zachary, and forever's just beginning."